to this special Sunday session of Ask the Expert, hosted by American Friends of Soroka Medical Center. This would be the fifth session that we're doing, and we're so excited to do a very special topic today. It's the power of mindfulness, and talk about how to cope, and learn about the power of mindfulness, and even have a little experiential exercise among ourselves. So we have two amazing, really, friends of Soroka and doctors and experts. And I would like to invite Rachel Heisler, American Friends of Soroka Medical Center Executive Director, to welcome you all and to introduce our two special guests.
Thank you, Pazit, and welcome everybody. Pazit Levitan is the Director of Development at American Friends of Soroka Medical Center. So American Friends of Soroka is a community of leaders, people coming together from diverse backgrounds to support one of Israel's most important and vital institutions. Soroka Medical Center is the sole major medical center for the entire south of Israel, and is responsible for the health of 1.2 million individuals. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Soroka has emerged as a true global leader and role model, implementing safety protocols, building an isolated emergency hospital with capacity to admit 74 COVID-19 patients, and establishing testing for hundreds of Negev residents a day in a very safe fashion that protects the health of overall society of the Negev. I invite you to learn more about us at soroka.org, where you can sign up to receive notifications about future events such as today, and also learn about Soroka's activities during the pandemic and ways in which you can help support. You can also look at our special crowdfunding site called soroka.org/COVID. And now it's my honor to introduce our special guest today. Dr. Therese Rosenblatt is a board member of American Friends of Soroka Medical Center. Okay. Dr. Rosenblatt is a psychologist and also is a psychoanalyst, and we are very grateful to have her on our team during these most challenging times. You can visit our website or Facebook page for a link to the March 27th session that she previously led for us on managing stress. We need these tools more than ever today. Dr. Rosenblatt has a private practice in Scarsdale and Manhattan and provides therapy for adolescents, adults, and couples experiencing anxiety, depression, and facing a range of personal issues. Dr. Rosenblatt is a graduate of Barnard College and of the Furkov Graduate School of Psychology at Yeshiva University. Her book, The Voice of an Analyst, demonstrates the importance for mental health professionals to develop their own unique identity that reflects their character and their training, helping them to maximize their connection to their patients and helping them to fulfill their mission to ease human suffering. And today, we warmly welcome Dr. Adi Avivi to the Soroka family. Dr. Avivi is a clinical psychologist working in New York City and is associated with Columbia University. She has been working in urban hospitals, focusing her clinical work on disenfranchised populations in inpatient and outpatient hospital settings. She graduated from Long Island University's post-campuses clinical psychology doctoral program, where she focused her studies on severe mental illness, multiculturalism, and women's issues. During her doctoral training, Dr. Avivi worked at various short and long-term inpatient psychiatric hospitals in New York City. She completed an internship at Kings County Hospital Center and a postdoctoral fellowship at North Shore LIJ, now known as Northwell. Her research interests focused on women and the political and economic components influencing their psyches and identities. Her own study examined internet communication among child-free women. After her graduation, Dr. Avivi focused on group psychotherapy and received certification in group psychotherapy from the American Group Psychotherapy Association. Currently, she's leading psychotherapy and supervision groups in a group therapy clinic and has a private practice. Today, Dr. Avivi is bringing her expertise and passion for helping people to help us and introduce us to the cultivation of mindfulness to help us reduce stress and improve overall health. Please enjoy the Sunday session with our hope that it gives you another tool in your personal toolbox to thrive during these exceedingly stressful times. And now, Dr. Therese Rosenblatt will get us started.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Rachel. Just before we turn to Teresa, I'm going to say that you guys will stay muted. And if you have any question, you unmute yourself. If you have any problems to unmute myself, simply old school, raise your hand and I will help you unmute. You can jump in with a question, and we will have also dedicated time after each of the experts' presentation for question and answers. So we're going to start with Teresa and Dr. Rosenblatt. And if you remember, hopefully you were with us a month ago that we had Ask the Expert session with Dr. Rosenblatt, and she introduced to some of the coping mechanisms for especially during this time. And a lot have changed too. A lot has changed. So Dr. Rosenblatt, please let us know what has changed, and please enrich us by sharing with us what's going on now with these times and the coping of stress. Thank you.
Thanks, Pazit and Rachel, and hi everybody. And thank you, Soroka, and thank you, Rachel and Pazit, for having me today. And for you guys deserve kudos for making things happen. I'm sometimes the voice of, well, this may not be realistic or that's realistic, but you guys just make things happen. So thank you. I hope everyone's feeling healthy, and please keep Soroka Medical Center in mind when you think about helping out those in crisis. We are at a different place now from where we were a month ago when I discussed the challenges of living through this pandemic and shelter in place, as well as ways to stay strong and in good mental shape. I think, Pazit, you put the PowerPoint on the screen. I don't know if you did or you did.
Yes, I'm going to share it now with the people.
And that just has some bullet points from my talk last month in which I outlined challenges and coping strategies for keeping your cool as we weather this hot storm. Just so I don't have to go, I don't want to take your time going over it again, but it's there. So it's been approximately 6 weeks since we've been scared for our lives and our pocketbooks, and our lives have been restricted due to COVID-19. We are tired now, and we are scared, and some of us are feeling not as much hope as we would like. Many things feel harder, and we may not have gotten used to the many losses that we're enduring, both big and little. People may find themselves more anxious about the lack of an end in sight and without any clear plan or central leadership in place. Leadership so important for giving hope. At the same time, people are getting adjusted to their new normal, putting down new routines and adjusting their work and their personal lives. It is possible to feel the gamut of all these contradictory emotions at once or at different times. So I get, my job is to listen. So I listen a lot. So in listening to patients, friends, family, and listening to myself a lot, I have noticed that people's feelings and reactions to this challenge are really evolving. So I add the following observations to my initial ones. While many people are still struggling, and as I said, struggling even more than in the beginning, some people, interestingly, are enjoying their stay at home, even while they lament the deprivations and the hardships that they're enduring. There are big losses, like the death of loved ones and sometimes drastically diminished incomes. But on the small side of losses, we've lost everything from our hair color and our hair salons and cuts to a sustaining cup of Starbucks in the afternoon when our energy is sagging. And people are grieving. People are grieving the big losses, but the little ones too, because those are the things that hold us in place, that keep us sewn together and regulated. All those little things that we rely on, people are grieving. So, but some people who tend towards introversion and spending time alone with their thoughts, which for some people is hard, but some people love it. And this is an un-American thing because we Americans tend to be action oriented. Those people can appreciate the quiet, love being able to spend more time with themselves. They're enjoying their friendship with themselves. And I'm going to include me in that group, but I have a number of patients who've said to me guiltily, I'm actually really enjoying this. And one very young woman back at home with her parents is saying, they keep telling me to reach out and it would be good for me, but I'm so enjoying being able to spend all this time with myself. I really relate to that. Some are relishing their ability to spend more time with loved ones uninterrupted and without distractions. I have one lovely elder male patient who's very much of a caretaker in his large extended family whom he loves. He is loving that he has his wife's undivided attention because she's always taking care of the rest of the world. Some love working with fewer interruptions, having fewer demands made on them, and being able to drop their commute to work. One guy I work with, a lawyer, was positively giddy with delight as he explained to me that he gets more work done. He's a partner in a law firm, works so hard, but he gets more work done at home, and he gets to see his young children every day. Many are finding therapy in cooking and baking, and I'm going to give a shout out to a couple of my sons who I have joined us with their girlfriends. And food is everybody's talking about when their next meal is, because that's our big form of stimulation. And you know, when the going gets tough, some of the tough get cooking and baking. And I'm watching with delight as my sons and their girlfriends are cooking up these amazing dishes and sending the photograph. But as I said, many people are really having difficulty keeping up their spirits and their hope. Some, especially those with a tendency towards depression and other emotional vulnerabilities like OCD, and so many people have OCD, at least to an extent. They're really being triggered now. It's really tough for them. This is like their worst nightmare. Those who are very extroverted and depend upon their interpersonal connections to stay positive. I'm going to give a shout out to my mother, who I know is here. She's such an extrovert, may really be suffering. And I don't, of course, don't want to neglect the economy and the, gnawing stress that it causes to have your income lowered and watch your portfolio shrink. But for those people, I say this. And these are things to try to do. And I also want to say, because I'm so used to listening to people who say, but I can't, it's too hard, I'm not able to do that. I know it's hard. You need to ask yourself to really do what may not come natural, what may be out of your comfort zone, to stretch yourself to do something, but these things will be helpful. Be here now. Try not to get hung up on what was and what your old life was or what will be. Try to stay in the moment and just get through each day. Where are you right now today? It won't help to look back or forward. Make friends with yourself. Embrace yourself. There was a great interview with, I think, a Washington Post correspondent who was in solitary in an Iranian jail for a year. And he talked about that, about sort of discovering himself, making friends with himself, thinking about what do you like to do and do it. Now's your chance. What do you like about yourself? He talked about how he discovered how movement was so helpful. He would walk up and down his 8x8 cell numerous times throughout the day. I am falling back on exercise, and I always do, and I'm adding to that 90-minute walks every day. That movement and that strength kicks in endorphins and a sense of strength and turning passive into active. Define and articulate what opportunities are offered by shelter in place. Some of the people I mentioned did not see this as an opportunity at first. And using myself as an example, I love my work. I love meeting with patients. What I don't like is being chained to my therapist chair all day. I am a very physical person. Now I have a lot of phone sessions where I can walk while I'm in the session. Sometimes I do it outside and I'm loving it. And that is an opportunity. I'm enjoying thinking, being alone with my thoughts, writing. I'm enjoying resting more. I'm getting sleep that I didn't get because of all my commutes. I'm enjoying watching TV. I never got to watch TV very much. I'm loving all my Netflix series are my wine and my drug. And the walks and noticing things about where I live that I never noticed before. Beautiful little, the ducks and the ponds and things like that. And of course, there are always home projects to get to. Use this as an opportunity to learn and discover about yourself. Observe yourself neutrally if you can. I heard an interview with a pastor, an elderly man who had recently lost his wife, not to COVID, but he loved her a great deal. And as he was grieving and sobbing, he was also mentally observing himself and making note of how he was acting and what he was going through and finding it very interesting. So be dispassionate about those things, not judgmental. Don't judge yourself. I knew I enjoyed time alone, but not to this extent. I never thought I would enjoy spending this much time at home. I'm not a homebody at all, but I'm loving it and I'm learning that about myself. If you pay close attention to yourself, you'll learn useful things to help guide you to healthy and important changes in your life. I'm learning about ways that I might want to conduct my practice with some changes when we go back, that I never would have really had the nerve to think of before. One of my patients who thought she was a real city rat went out to a suburban area of the country to stay with her mother, with her husband and toddler, and realized that she might not want to stay in the city. She might want to live in the suburbs because she's so enjoying the green and being in a house. If you're anxious, as many of us are, and have difficulty being alone with your thoughts, which can, many people feel that way, especially their anxious thoughts, talk to yourself inwardly. We all have an inner child. We all have aspects of ourselves that are still young, that under duress and stress and anxiety, we revert back to those childish states, especially when there's fear. But there's an adult part of you too that's mature and high functioning. Have that adult talk to that child. One of my patients and I learned that if her adult side could say to that fearful, panicky child, you're going to be okay. Remember all your strengths. Remember the things that you're so good at and how you manage so well. That scared child calms down. Use it as a time to get clarity on your priorities or possibly pare down and simplify your life. I'm learning that I can give up so many things that I thought I couldn't live without, like going out for food. I hate cooking. Now I'm cooking. My hair color, the way my housekeeper would leave my house gleaming. When I really thought about what is it that really feels intolerable to me, that makes me sad, that really makes me suffer and cry. Sorry, guys, don't mean to induce guilt, but it's not being able to see my kids in the flesh, and that's what really matters. No guilt intended, guys, because they're online just to make you feel loved. Accept and even embrace your feelings, even your bad ones. And there are truly scary and difficult thoughts right now. Many people feel they must do away with bad feelings. That really doesn't work. They will find a way to come and bite you in the behind. Some anxiety and depression will not kill you. You must remind yourself of that. If you can stay with those feelings, you will see that you will survive them and they pass. Often you will learn something from those bad, dark feelings, because feelings are communicators of something important going on. Think of it as a learning opportunity. Say, what is going on with me? Why am I depressed right now? Why am I scared? As one viewer said to Brian Stelter of CNN, it's okay not to be okay at times. We're coming by it honestly, but this is not a time to be hard on yourself and others. And finally, when you feel at a complete loss, think about a model in your life, a person who you could emulate. I have a deceased aunt and uncle who were fabulous parents, and all 5 of their kids turned out great. And when I'm really grasping for, how do there's a parenting decision I need to make and I'm having trouble with, I think about what they might do and I channel them, and it's enormously helpful. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rosenblatt. That was truly inspiring and informative. And, it's a great segue, the need to be conscious of oneself and self-care, to what Dr. Avivi is gonna focus on, mindfulness and the power of it, to be mindful to oneself and the other. So with that, Dr. Avivi, please.
Hey, everybody. It's a real honor to spend this afternoon with you guys. I want to thank Rachel and Pazit for the introduction and for this opportunity. I want to second Dr. Rosenblatt and say, it's amazing that you're making this happen. It's a tough time to recruit all your resources into something so productive and creative. So I'm grateful and honored. And I wanted everything that Dr. Rosenblatt said, I could tie to mindfulness. And it's fine if you heard that buzzword, it's very buzzy and you don't quite know what it is. And it's also fine if you're really versed at it and it's part of your life. What I suggest that we'll do is that we'll start with the shortest mindfulness exercise that I've ever learned or taught others. It's really, really simple. And I hope that you'll join me and we'll do it together. And then if there are some brave souls in this little community of us in this moment, I would love to hear from you. And it's okay if there aren't. There are many ways we can go about it. So the way that I ask you to do this is just to sit comfortably, and if at all possible, put your feet on the ground. If any of you want to stand up, that's also okay. Whatever feels right, just listen to the body. And then this mindfulness exercise goes this way. You lift your left foot to the heel, so toes up toward the sky and heels down. And then you let the toes go down, back, flat on the ground. And then you lift your right foot toes up and rest on your heel, and then put the toes down. And then you take a mindful breath. That is, you're taking a little bit of a deeper breath and you slow the exhale. Here, I'll stand with you so that you don't feel alone. And we're gonna do that together. I'm gonna ring my mindfulness bell just because that's good practice. And when I do that, just do this exercise. One foot, another foot, and a deep breath. And now I invite you to come back and sit if you want, and do a quick check-in with yourselves. I wanted to ask you if you noticed 3 kind of aspects of the experience. Any thoughts that came up in the mind, anything in the body that was noticeable, and any feelings, emotions that came up. And it could be the thought like, what does this woman want from me? Why is she telling me to get up? It could be a sensation of like, this is different, or maybe a loss of balance for a second when I ask you to put the toes up. And an emotion could be whatever emotion is coming up right now. Could be amusement, could be boredom, whatever. I'm happy to hear if anybody is willing to say. I'll give it a second, and if no one jumps in, we'll go a different route.
So let's unmute everybody and jump in if you want to share what you're feeling.
Major. Can you
Okay.
tell me the number to use?
All right, I have a suggestion. Why don't we not unmute everybody?
Just mute those who want to share.
Yeah, because I'm
Raise their hand or something.
Okay. Great. Okay.
There's also, if people don't know, you can also raise your hand Is it in reactions?
No, it's in participants. If you press the participants, you see a raise hand function there.
So you can like do a virtual raise hand.
Raise your hand. If you cannot find it, just raise your real hand and we'll unmute you. Anybody? Naomi, did I see your hand? No. Okay, we're looking here. If anybody just wants to unmute
Rachel is raising her hand, so I'm gonna unmute her.
Oh, great, Rachel.
Wait, Rachel, wait. I can't.
Thank you for saying that about feeling unsteady, because that's how I felt for a second when I stood up and then I lifted my foot. I felt initially wobbly, and then I steadied myself and I noted that I just felt back in control. And even in that brief instant, I felt that.
All right. So the body gave you this signal. Hey, I don't quite feel settled. And then you settled and you know that difference between feeling unsettled and settled.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead, Teresa.
Yeah.
I felt in a very yoga-esque way. I just felt my whole body, muscles, and what they were doing and trying to balance. And they felt very alive. It was a very alive physical feeling.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to share for a second, and then I see iPad 136. So I'm going to unmute you in a second. I want to say that one of the things that I had noticed is that my heart was pounding, and then I saw Naomi smile really widely, and I was like, oh, somebody's enjoying it, and it lowered that kind of little bit of a performance anxiety. So that's something that I had noticed, that the smile kind of gave me a little bit of a internal resource. And yes, iPad 136. Introduce yourself.
This is Marshall Sonnenschein. Nice to be with everybody. You know, the minute somebody initiates a mindfulness exercise, and I've occasionally been in the company of somebody like yourself who's concerned with that, I'm reminded of how it feels when I'm in the doctor's office and they say, take a deep breath. And suddenly, the instruction and the activity makes me aware of my physicality. And your questions about what are your thoughts and what are your feelings reminds me of the old dialect between thought and feeling. And what I wanted to say about all this is what immediately occurs to me is that I think I'm one of these people who is very externally focused on what I call the real world, the activity of commerce and political and financial activity out there. But when I'm in the company of a psychologist or somebody who's concerned with mindfulness or my own physician, I am immediately brought back into the internal world. And so that's what occurs to me about your exercise. And it reminds me that I sometimes forget about myself. I'm so focused about what's going on out there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Go ahead, Nancy.
Hi. First of all, I'd like to say hello and thank you for including me in this Zoom today. I am Marshall's sister, and I was thinking quite similarly before when you asked us to do the exercise. For me, taking a deep breath like that, for some reason causes me a little bit of an internal anxiety in that chest area, in the lung area. And I think it's partly related to the feeling that now you're focusing on your physicality. But I also think for me, and I feel this at night before I go to sleep, I often say to my husband, I feel like I'm going to get sick overnight. Now, I've been extremely careful. I don't go out. I follow all the, recommended instructions, but somehow it's still tied into that fear of getting sick. And it takes a moment for me to let it pass and realize that that's more in my mind than in my body, actually. So far, thank God. But I definitely feel that, and I do feel that a lot at night when the day's done and, all the frenzy's kind of over for the day. I think it's probably something that a lot of people feel, because you jump from feeling okay at home to feeling, maybe you get a little sick, to the thought of being what we see on the news all the time in the hospital, to that level. And it's an unimaginable leap. And to me, it's very scary. So I think that has something to do with the little bit of anxiety that I would feel over an exercise like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Nancy, thank you so much for your honesty and the bravery to admit that process. And I am really happy that people are jumping in and talking, because what you're talking about is exactly what we're trying to address with mindfulness. And it ties so nicely to what, Teresa, you were talking about, because what you're saying is, I am so focused on the world outside that I'm losing touch with the knowledge that my internal self is giving me. Either my body is giving me signals, the mind is producing all these thoughts, and my emotions are forgotten. And so what I'm left with is those racing thoughts, especially at night. You're so not alone with that, Nancy. My patients say it all the time, my friends, my family, because when we're busy, we're able to distract ourselves from certain anxiety, from certain concerns. And then at night, when we're with ourselves and there's kind of like an open air around us, the mind might wander to places that are not necessarily that nice. You know, it's a scary thing, the mind. It goes, the imagination of humanity is really something else. And there's a saying in mindfulness that the mind is a wonderful servant and a horrible master. When we can harness the mind to do our bidding, we can go to the moon, which is unbelievable. And if the mind is mastering us, then it will take us sometimes to places that are not real, but they feel really real, and they're really unpleasant. So when Teresa is saying there's all these available things, all these wonderful opportunities within this stressful and scary time, we need to be mindful of them, or they're not available to us. The fact that they're out there, if we can't see them and we can't jump on them, it's not as effective. So what mindfulness does is giving us an avenue to recognize, what is it that I like? Yes, it would be great if I do more of what I like. It's great if I can find opportunities to engage in something that is good for me and is nourishing for me. And if I don't know what it is or where to get it, then I won't be able to engage in it. And maybe my anxiety and my depression, my sense of helplessness will increase. So I would love to hear from other people. If anybody else noticed something, either while doing the tiny exercise or as we're talking. Go ahead, Naomi.
I have an anonymous question here. Yes, and it's saying that person is saying that this small exercise felt really good. What other types of exercises can one do, especially for someone who has vertigo? Is there anything else that they can do?
Okay, I will answer it, and then Naomi, I saw that you raise your hand. So if you have vertigo, you can do mindfulness exercises lying down. If that feels better, you can certainly do it sitting. You don't have to get up. And you can do mindfulness exercises that might be not about the body, which goes to what Nancy said as well. Sometimes the breath is just, the reason that we focus on the breath with mindfulness is that it's available. It's with us all the time and it's happening in the moment. And I'll talk about what that means in a second. So we often go to that. However, for some people, if there are any respiratory problems, or if you have vertigo and all this oxygen suddenly coming in more, a little bit more oxygen can get you a little dizzy, and that would be unpleasant. Or if right now with Corona, anything that has to do with breath is just too much, that's fine. We can focus on our hands or our feet. Those are typically, for most people, body parts that are not tied to too much emotions. So we can just like examine the sensation in the hands and in the feet. And one wonderful thing is, if it's too much to focus on the self, Marshall, if that's overwhelming at some moment or activating, you can focus on the sounds in the environment. So, oh, my boyfriend is joining us. So you can focus on the environmental sound, that kind of soundtrack that's always around us. Sound is happening right here, right now, and we can focus on it, and it takes us away from ourselves. And Naomi, I wanna give you a moment to talk, and then I'll like do a little bit of a bird view and tell you a little bit about mindfulness and my experience with it.
I can wait till after you're finished. It's okay.
No, let's do it fluid. It's better.
Right. I would answer you. First of all, I'm Theresa's mother, so that you all know what bias I come with, and I find her very wise, to the point, and helpful.
Well, you did a wonderful job.
Thank you very much.
I'm blushing, guys.
No secrets. What I notice when you give me that exercise, well, not overwhelmed, but I'm concerned. Can I execute it? This deep breathing, am I good at it? So I'm completely taken with my inability as I see it, not suffering, but acknowledging that I'm not such a great athlete and I'm not able to breathe so long and so deep. That's number one. Putting that aside now, at this point in my life, I find that walking a long distance, or relatively for where I am in life, is where I do a lot of my thinking. And one of the anchors that helps me, doesn't solve all these feelings, but helps me, is the Israeli expression, there is no choice. Once I acknowledge that the virus, the corona, that's it, that's the situation. To acknowledge it with all the things that you've said, including my daughter, but all the feelings and so forth, I acknowledge it. And then the second, not to deny it, then the next step is to try and deal with it now that I'm in the process of acknowledging. And one of my deepest fears, having to deal maybe with my background or history or Jewish history, is the fear of being separated from my children. And I don't know when this epidemic will ever come to an end. That's the umbrella of fear. And that's—
Naomi, I cannot thank you enough, because what you said right now, you just paved the road for me to talk about mindfulness effectively. So I'm so, so grateful.
And I love when you say Nomi.
Nomi, my mom's name is also Nomi. So, all right. So what I want to say, this is great. I'm so glad that Nomi spoke, because at first she talked about the judgment that came up for her. That kind of judgmental inner voice that is coming in and saying, you're not breathing deep enough. Are you an athlete, Naomi? No, you're not. So why are you pretending? What is this? If you can't do this perfectly, don't do it at all. Blah, 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 blah. All these judgments that are robbing us from the opportunity to connect with ourselves and with other people with compassion. Because when we are engaging in mindfulness, it's not just I want to give the definition. The definition is intentionally paying attention. So paying attention, being attentive intentionally to the current moment, because we can be very, very attuned to the past or to the future. When we are mindful, we are attuned intentionally with a purpose to the current moment, kindly and non-judgmentally, with compassion. We're meeting whatever is coming, even the parts of ourselves that we don't like. Maybe we don't like it that we're not great athletes. We're meeting that part with compassion. Because if we're meeting it with a judgment, there is a sense of rejection. Let me label it and reject it. This is bad. It's a very black and white kind of thinking. So I love that Naomi said that, because she's talking about a process that's so human, so natural, to come with judgments. When we are mindful, it's not like we're going to stop being judgmental. I'm sorry. I know you all hope that we're just going to be compassionate to self and others since we're having this talk. The good news is that we can pay attention to it and meet those judgments with compassion. The fact that we have a judgmental part does not mean that it's a bad part. It's trying to do something for us. Just noticing it will lower it a little bit. You can thank that part, be like, thank you for reminding me that I'm not an athlete. Let me take a deep breath. You don't have to engage with it too much. Don't judge the judging. So that was the first thing. The second thing, Naomi, you said is about acceptance. Let me accept reality. Reality is what it is. Me saying this is not okay. It's not, my mom is in Israel. It's not okay. I was supposed to go home for Passover. Guess what? I stayed in New York. So it isn't okay. I'm not happy about it. It is the reality of things. And if I stay in that anger toward that reality, in that frustration with reality, I might lose opportunities to enjoy whatever is available for me. And I might even enjoy opportunities to connect with my mom, with what is available, because that will bring up so much judgment and frustration for me. So acceptance is another kind of like an attitude that we come to mindfulness with. Non-judgmentalness and acceptance. And then Naomi told us about the story that she's telling herself. Because of my past, because of who I am, this is the most difficult thing for me, and I am suffering. Part of mindfulness is creating this separation between the mind's story and reality. Those are not the same things. So I wonder if people are willing to do another playful exercise before we go to Q&A. Can you guys like nod if you're into it, or do this? All right, awesome. And again, if nobody wants to say anything after this and you don't feel like participating, don't worry about it. I can take us elsewhere. Though I'm kind of like hopeful that somebody will jump in. So one thing that I learned recently that I really, really enjoyed, let me just, I really enjoyed this, this little psychodrama exercise that helps us understand the difference between the story that the mind is telling. Remember, the mind, if it's our servant, it's wonderful. If it's controlling us, if it's our master, it might be really painful for us to be in reality, because we're not actually in reality, we're in the mind. I'll give you a snippet that studies have shown that the mind is wandering almost 50% of the time, like I think it's 47 or 48% of the time. So half the time almost, we're not here in this reality. We're somewhere else, and you can check in with yourself. Teresa and I have been talking for what, like about half an hour? How many times have the mind wandered and took you elsewhere? So we want to try, and this, the hopeful thing is that we can minimize that. We can teach ourselves to be a little bit more mindful. And so another study have shown that people who are often, their minds is typically wandering to the past, suffer more depression symptoms. Why is that? The past is gone. We can't change it. It makes us feel helpless and hopeless, because if we're looking at something that can't be changed a lot, that will make us feel hopeless. And that's part of depression. And people who are often kind of oriented toward the future would feel more anxiety symptoms. And why is that? The future is unknown. We don't know what's going to happen, and uncertainty increases anxiety. So when we're able to tether ourselves to the present, we are better able to combat those feelings that might be difficult for us. So this isn't the exercise. The exercise is about teaching us to maybe look in fresh eyes, kind of a beginner eyes at ourselves. So I'm going to tell you about my experience with Corona from this little item perspective. I'm sure all of you know what it is. It's a cell phone. It's my cell phone. And instead of telling you my story with Corona from my perspective, I'm going to use an observant eye of something else. And then if anybody is willing to play along and tell us for like a minute about their life with Corona from the perspective of some inanimate object that has been accompanying you. I heard people talking from the perspective of their sweatpants that became super popular, or from some cooking utensil, etc. So I'm going to be Adi's cell phone. So I'm Adi's cell phone, and I've been observing Adi for the last 5 to 6 weeks. Adi likes me a lot on regular days. She's really into me. She looks at me in between sessions with her patients. She often kind of plays with me the first thing when she wakes up in the morning. She picks me up and we hang out with each other for a little while. And since Corona started, she's been even more engaged with me. I see her sometimes glance at me, even when she's doing her own mindfulness sessions, because she kind of like looks at my clock. I can see that she's a little bit more restless. And when she's more restless, she's hanging out with me more often. And once I even saw her raise her voice at her stepdad. I've never seen that before, but she was yelling, and I don't see her yelling that much. And I think she yelled at him because he wasn't keeping social distance the way she thought was better for him. So she yelled at him a little. And I know that after that, she felt a little sorry and she wanted to apologize, but she also felt that she was right, and she was scared that if she'll apologize, he might still do the things she doesn't think he should do. So, so I offered her something good. I offered her to play some Sudoku because I have a Sudoku app on me, and we spent some time doing that. And when she calmed down, she called him again and they made peace. So that's the story of my Corona journey from the perspective of the cell phone. And when I was talking as the cell phone, I was kind of amused and I was completely non-judgmental. The phone didn't judge me. It didn't decide whether or not what I did was good or bad. It just told a story, and it gives me some expansion, some space for whatever it is that was going on for me. And I wonder if there's anybody who's willing to play along and maybe tell us the story of their Corona experience from any inanimate object's perspective. All right, thank you, Jacob.
Sure. Yeah, I think a lot of people might have this answer, but I do think that it holds a lot of weight. It's not really anything very random. It's not anything that I'm looking around at my desk right now. It's my computer, not my phone. Obviously, phones are really important, but it's my computer because the computer can do pretty much everything the phone can do, but it's a lot more conducive to work. So if I can't be out in the world, then I want my mind to be out in the world. And the way to do
Jacob,
that, yeah.
I want you to say, I'm Jacob's computer, and tell me the story of maybe the last few days or maybe whatever part of this experience. You think you can do that?
Like, yeah, I think I can do that. Yeah.
As if you are the computer.
Okay, I'm all right. I'm Jacob's computer, and I help Jacob access the world and more than work from home, but enjoy learning every day about the subject that he's interested in. And without me, Jacob is truly stuck at home, not in the world, but with me, Jacob accesses the world every day.
Thank you so much. I know that I'm wondering if there was any change in anxiety when I asked you to be your computer. A little bit.
Joy would like to add. Yes, Joy.
Well, what I'd like to say is that for me, I'm isolated on my own, although I've got friends and family and feel I'm one of the lucky ones. But it's brought people, my phone has brought people closer together. It means that I'm in constant contact with my grandchildren and my family. The people I haven't heard of for years are phoning and keeping in touch, and that's the very positive side of it. When I did the exercise before, it reminded me that I should exercise more. I'm very lazy and I should get out and exercise more. And the other thing came to me while listening to both the speakers was that you have no control over what jumps into your mind. And sometimes that is quite troubling. But for me, the good side of Corona is the way it's brought people together and brought people to care for each other a lot more.
Go ahead,
Yes, Teresa. Yes.
So I'm my house, and my house is watching me and who I am and how I'm coping. And it's saying, this is somebody who is really trying to put structure and order into her life. And she's a very structured person, but it's also a way of trying to exert control over something that is out of her control. It's a way that she tries to maintain a sense of normalcy in a bizarrely abnormal situation. She's a person who needs a sense of aesthetics and order and beauty and comfort. And that is a way to counteract the fears that are lurking in the dark, in the parts of her mind that she does try to avoid, but then to follow my own advice and Dee's technique of mindfulness, which there's huge overlap. I feel like I've talked about really the same concepts, and then Dee kind of gives a technique for carrying it out. I know that behind that order, that beauty, that control that I'm trying to create in my house is this cauldron of potential fear, a sense of being out of control, a potential to slip into hopelessness about this situation, and a feeling of being passive. I'd like to say to Trump, move over. I know what to do. I can lead, and follow me, and we'll come up with a good plan. Instead, I'm creating order in my house, and my house is watching me do this.
Thank you so much, Teresa. And I see you, Scott. I want to comment on something toward Jacob and Teresa. I'm so grateful that people are brave enough to jump right in and do this, because I think even though it could be anxiety-provoking, especially in a big group, to suddenly do psychodrama, you're like, what? I'm going to be in a role suddenly. What I'm hearing, what you're saying, Teresa, and what you, Jacob, said, and a little bit, was it Joy that spoke? Joy spoke earlier, is that people are noticing, as you're looking from the perspective of that inanimate object, that I heard a thread, that there is a need to manage connections. There is a need to be connected and to feel that you have access to the world. And with you, Teresa, it's like, I need to feel a little bit of control. And what I do have control over is creating a bit of a structure, creating a bit maybe of a schedule or a routine that works for me. And so I want to encourage you guys to do the two feet and a breath, especially if you're feeling overwhelmed, just because it will slow you down. And then if you want, tell yourself the story of what's going on from the perspective of an inanimate object that really loves you, has no judgment over you. It doesn't think in terms of good or bad, just says, this is what's going on. This is how it is for so-and-so right now. This is how it is for Jacob. He has a little bit more access to the world. He gets some contact. He has some control over his job. And he also feels that he's not completely disconnected from others. And that will inform you of what it is that you need. You can also tell the story from a perspective of an organ in your body. So like, I am so-and-so's muscles, and I feel achy. Maybe you will learn that you need a little bit of movement. Nobody here needs to be an athlete. That's okay. Maybe you just need a stretch. Scott, you were raising your hand?
And then can I just jump in for one moment here?
Sure.
I think one of the themes here is also a sense of I can't, of feeling helpless, of feeling passive. And that is part of the anxiety that is gnawing at us in this situation. And when you take these intentional steps, and as I was saying before, this isn't easy. You may not feel like it. You may feel sluggish. You may feel unmotivated and hopeless. But these intentional steps that you have to really push yourself to take can help turn passive into active. And we know that taking an active stance does what we call in Shrinkland, can bind anxiety, can take the anxiety and help you manage it and control it. So even if you choose one small thing, like I love the book by Admiral McRaven, Make Your Bed. Make your bed in the morning, get dressed, find a task, or maybe a larger project, volunteer for a hotline or a helpline. We know there's tons of research that shows that helping somebody is therapeutic. So whether it's a large step that you take that's intentional, that takes control, that is productive, or a small step of taking a shower, making your bed nicely, making a nice meal, these are also ways in to feel active instead of like a helpless victim.
Okay, thanks. We have a few more minutes, so we're gonna open to more questions. There is one more anonymous question here on the chat. And by the way, Adi, you can refer to the chat and the links you just put in a moment.
Yeah.
But I just wanna say that there is a question, and it builds up what Joy was saying, that sometimes something comes in your mind, even when you don't invite it or you don't hope for it. So there was a question, what if you really are ready to go to sleep, but you're not relaxed? Something comes to your mind. What can you do in terms of mindfulness practice at night before you sleep to enhance relaxation and calm the mind?
So I think, first of all, I want to remind you that thoughts are not reality. Thoughts are thoughts. One way of thinking of it is everything that the mind produces is a rumor. It's a rumor. Maybe it's true, maybe not. I don't have to believe it. Or one of my mindfulness teachers recently said that the mind is like a pack of teenagers playing video games in the other room. It's going and going and going. Sometimes you hear some of it, you don't have to take it seriously. Sometimes they say horrible things, those teenagers playing video games. You don't have to take it too seriously. So just by reminding yourself that those thoughts are not reality, it's an event of the mind, might be a little soothing. I also want to recommend to have kind of a going to sleep ceremonial kind of routine that might be helpful for you. And finally, I want to say that mindfulness is not something that you're just going to start and then you'll do it for 5 minutes and then all those thoughts are going to go away. People who are practicing mindfulness, it doesn't look like this. It looks like this, even after years. So just be prepared for that. You're not doing anything wrong. One thing that you could do if you really want to try to work with this is to start doing even like 2 minutes a day in the morning, not right when you go to sleep. Imagine that your thoughts are, imagine that you're looking at a stream, like a slow stream, and that it's full. And all these different color leaves are just slowly going from the up the stream toward down the stream. And every time you have a thought, it's just like you put it on a leaf and it's floating away, because the thoughts are going to come and go. You'll notice that they change and they come and go. You can imagine that it's floating on clouds in the sky. Or if you're not such a visual person, you can label them and say thoughts, worry thoughts, judgment thoughts, past thoughts, future thoughts. Just giving it a name could be a little bit useful. What we're trying to do is create some space between me, a D, and the thoughts. If you're fused with the thoughts, if you're one with the thoughts, it will be a little harder. You will believe the thoughts and the emotions that are associated with them. So what we're trying to do is create a little bit of breathing room. Whatever you practice will be more pronounced in your life. So you can practice that and try to like breathe a little slower. When we slow the out breath, we evoke the parasympathetic nervous system, which is about relaxation, digestion. It's not about fight or flight. So starting to associate the idea of thoughts coming and going with relaxation could be quite helpful. It's not going to happen from one day to another, but I hope that that will be a little bit helpful for you.
Can I add something to that?
Yes, Dr. Rosen.
So I agree fully with everything that Adi is saying, and particularly the idea that we as humans have a tendency to feel that our thoughts actually have power. If we're very angry at somebody and something happens to them, it's a human tendency to feel guilt that we caused it. And you must remind yourself, one of the essences of maturity is to allow yourself to have all kinds of thoughts, even bad ones, and to know that they have no power. But I'm going to want to give you a personal example. One of my sons recently got engaged, and we're all very excited, and I have fantasies of a lovely wedding for him. Well, who knows when they'll be able to have a real celebratory wedding, and that's something that I worry about a little bit. But then remember that I said we have an adult part of us and a more childish part of us that comes to the surface when we're stressed and scared. Have your older, more mature part of yourself tell that scared child, it will work out. Now the other side of you might say, well, no, it won't. You know, social distancing is going to go on for all that chatter in your head. But then you have to really, that's where you have to use some discipline and remind yourself, actually, if you just stay with yourself and say, name it, I think as Adi might have said, name it. Okay, that's your fear because of blah, 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 blah. But really, if I just stay with this, okay, I'm worried about this. And you then say, just stay there and remind yourself, like in the serenity prayer for the 12 steps, I have no control over this. Let's see how it plays out. The truth of the matter is, things usually do work out. What I mean by that is solutions present themselves. Everybody wants to have weddings. We'll figure out a way to have weddings and just stay with that. And then finally, do something that you find calming. I have discovered that when I'm having trouble sleeping and nothing is working, even chemical solutions, that podcasts, a soothing podcast, there are all these podcasts that have sort of narratives and stories. It's like being told, it puts me to sleep. I think it's because it evokes being told a bedtime story by a caretaker, and I go right to sleep.
Yeah, I think there's a podcast called Stories to Fall Asleep with, or something of that sort. You can, yeah, Jacob, do you know the exact name? Maybe you're willing to say?
I think it's called Calm.
Oh, Calm has a great. It's an app. A lot of these apps are now offering free subscriptions. So I want to.
Yeah,
I think I also want, are there other questions? Because I want to make
yeah,
sure.
there is one more question here before, and maybe others. But I just want to say that New York State has partnered with an app called Headspace. Great app. It has meditations. It has, even if you feel low and you want energy, you know, whatever you want. And it's based on music or guided meditation or stories before sleep. There's a category just for sleep. So Headspace, it's and I think it's cost free right now. There's a question here. I think we all feel that we want to stay with you two for hours more, and it just helps. And if we feel that this is really helpful, how do we know, how do each one of us knows that if this is for him? And if this is for him or her, is it better for me to go to one-on-one talk therapy or to a group role play or mindfulness? How do we know what's right for us, and where can we find it?
Okay. Is it okay if I take it, Therese, or do you want to go?
Let's both answer it. I mean, we can.
Yes, okay. Both, please, both address it, yeah.
So I really do think that there isn't one thing that fits everybody. And I want to tell you just a little bit about my journey with mindfulness. So I'm Israeli. Anything spiritual and new agey just brings the cynic, the vicious cynic in me. So imagine my almost humiliation when I discovered that it works. It's really insulting that this thing is working for me. And the reason that I got into it is that I work in a clinic and I run groups. I'm a group therapist. And they asked me to run a mindfulness group. Never mind the background for this, but I was like, what? Me, mindfulness group? I'm like hardcore analysis, and I like to like understand the thoughts, just observing them. What are they talking about? Because it made me feel insecure, I went to an MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction course, got into that course, just sat down, had a major panic attack. What am I doing here? What is this? Why did I agree to this? And it's a course that is offered by a teacher that I gave it a link to it. And I want to say that some of your questions are going to be answered by something that I put on the chat, and I'll explain what I put down. And then I started practicing mindfulness, and it works. I don't know what to tell you. For me, I'm not saying it's going to work for everybody. So I think it's a bit of a trial, and it does take some time. My opinion is that if you've never done it or you're not sure about it, doing it with others and with a teacher could be really, really helpful, because there are a lot of questions that might come up. And if you want to, I'm going to go up, and if you see that I posted for everybody a couple of just YouTube links for just presentation about mindfulness by different people who I found talented and clear, and I thought it might be helpful. And then there is the beginner mindfulness book. Oh, that link, like the word book and the link are linked together. So please separate them. Just start with the HTTP. It's this book. I have it in Hebrew, but it was written in English. It's by Paddy Bronsnan. He's an Irish Buddhist monk. Not monk, sorry. He's not a monk. He's just an Irish Buddhist. And It's wonderful. It's called Mindfulness for Beginners. It's so nice and light, and it will give you, if you don't want to join a group or you don't want to work with other people, it could help you get started. And then the last thing that I put is spacetomeditate.com, which are my teachers, Dawn and Upayati. They offer free meditation sittings every day until Corona is over. And so you can just go to their website and get the information there. They also provide teaching on a smaller group base or individual, if that's interesting to you. I love them. They worked for me.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so those are my advice. Yes, go ahead, Therese.
Thank you, Dr. Avivi. Dr. Rosenblatt, please.
So as to the question of what kind of therapy does one choose or start with and how to access that, I would say in my experience, every person has a different modality that they feel comfortable with. So if you know that you're much more comfortable in one-on-one conversations, or you really want to focus on just yourself and your experience, absolutely individual therapy is the way for you. And then you might want to think about, are you more comfortable with a man or a woman, somebody older, younger, somebody who talks more, somebody who gives you more space and talks less? That's the way you should start. And also allow yourself to sample a few people if you're not sure. Some people love to get one name and that's all they want and it's not overwhelming, but some people need to, the match is very important between therapist and patient. You may want to allow yourself to get 2 names or even 3 names, meet with them, see who you like the best, see who you feel the most comfortable with. As between like individual or group therapy or even family therapy, some people are much more comfortable or curious about starting with a group or starting with family therapy. I just met with a new young woman who felt much more comfortable starting with meeting with her family and has slowly sort of segued into meeting alone. And I could go on about that, but, and you may learn once you start in one modality. Let's say you start with your family or with a group, you know what, I really want to be on my own. Or let's say you start individually, you might realize, you know, I have difficulty in groups, or I have some interpersonal tensions with people or with groups that I think might be better addressed in the group. Most people find if they're in a group that that's enhanced by also having individual therapy. So they're all different kinds of combinations. If you don't know where to go for a referral, there are many different sources. You can ask me for a referral or a D. You can go to Psychology Today website, and I'm on that. I don't know whether a D is, but they give therapists in different areas, and you can read their little blurb, see who you like. The other thing you can do is, I'm involved with my Psychoanalytic Institute and the New York University postdoctoral program in psychoanalysis. My institute, as well as all the other institutes, have sliding scale clinics where you can get hooked up with a therapist, used in the general sense of the word hookup, hopefully not the specific kind, but you can get matched with a therapist. And please remember that virtually, no pun intended, all therapists are now working online and by phone. So don't be discouraged from therapy because we're in shelter in place. I'm working online and on the phone. You can find people who do that on Psychology Today. At my institute, people are all working online, or virtually.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. I am totally open to offering referrals. Pazit can connect you to me. I work at a clinic for Columbia University, so my web presence and my capacity for private practice is more limited. However, I am extremely connected to the group therapy world. I'm a firm believer in group therapy. And if that's of curiosity for people, I will be happy to share some information about it and to help you match with a group. Sometimes, especially if they're financial constraints, groups are more affordable. And I want to support everything you said, Therese. I think it's so true. Just ask yourself what kind of person you are. I love that you say that. Just be mindful of who you are and what your needs are. And
thank you both. We are, you know, we are over the time, and I do appreciate so much. We all do your time and expertise and coming here and sharing with us. Dr. Rosenblatt, Dr. Avivi, American Friends of Soroka Medical Center, the board that's with us today. And we're doing it, you know, for on volunteer basis to share with expertise and help. And if you'd like to support COVID response of us in support of Soroka's life-saving equipment, I put the link here. It's soroka.org/COVID. Thank you very much. And we will see you all again in the next Ask the Expert session.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
and Rachel, for having us. Really appreciate it.
You are
Yeah,
most
it's such an
welcome. Thank
honor.
you guys.
And thank you for your fabulous work. Can I just say, I have watched American Friends of Soroka evolve from its very beginning to where it is now. And Rachel and Pazit I am in awe of the work they've done to support this amazing institution, which I've personally benefited from because my son, Sam, would not have been able to join us in India a few years ago if Soroka had not accommodated him at the very last minute to give him his vaccinations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you both. It's inspiring what you guys are doing, and just personally, I felt extremely supported and welcomed through the process of creating this presentation. You just made it so easy and natural to be a part of this community.
Wow. We're very thrilled to have produced this beautiful event today with such coordination and unity and great messaging and great help for everyone. So it's a great benefit that you both have offered to our community. A great benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. Toda.
Thanks. Toda. Toda rabba. Bye.